Hello everyone, how are you? I hope you're all well and ready to begin with the second part of the year. The video I'm recording right now aims at compensating for the face-to-face lesson I'm not going to be able to give on the 14th due to my leave of absence. So, the idea is to accompany you along the route, the boards of route and of the route for unit number 2. We agreed on working on the first two boards before the holiday and during the recess. So this video works together with the first board. If you remember the content of this first board, you have it here. You were expected to think about how we can and why we should teach content through the medium of English, connect theories of language and theories of learning, understand the context in which CLIL emerges, and then this means understand the history of CLIL. And then you were asked to work on lessons to begin to, on segments of lessons actually, to begin to think about this methodology before you watched a video to clarify what CLIL is and what CLIL is not. These lessons you were expected to compare and contrast, find differences, similarities, and then eventually think about our own context of work and how these lessons, if these lessons are present or not. Some of the similar differences you probably noticed in comparing A and B. A is a transcript and B offers you two short segments, videos of a lesson, is of course the additional language. The first one is English as an additional language, and the second ones are French. So this means this is a methodology, or rather an approach, that has not been thought of only for the teaching of English, but for the teaching of any additional language. It's a very popular approach in Europe. For example, in Spain, they are using it for teaching Vasco and Gallego. And I suppose in other places of Europe they are also using it to teach vernacular languages that are local, as well as English. So, differences. English and French, probably the level of content as well. From my point of view, magnetism is more sophisticated and more complex a theme than gravity and the solar system, or at least the way it is approached by the teacher. It's the teacher is describing an experience they are carrying out. And here in B, we see French as a means to teach the notions of gravity, and here the notions of the solar system, the topic of the solar system. We also notice differences regarding the simplicity or complexity of the task from the point of view of language demands and cognitive demands as well. Now, the last question, number 3, how are these lessons different or similar to the language lessons you know? Well, I can imagine your answer to this question is that they are very different, that you haven't seen or experienced lessons like this in your context of work, or you yourself as a student, until you got to the teacher training college, where obviously all lessons are content-based. So, these similarities, I don't want to forget saying this, these differences of level already tell you or anticipate something you will hear in the video. The CLIL approach is an approach that can fit many contexts of work. It's not an educational approach that has been thought for a small number of students or privileged groups. It's an approach that promises the possibility of being applied to almost any context. So, coming back to this question, this idea of thinking about our own context of work, well, we really, I'm sure you said no to this question. Your answer is no to this question. And the problem here is that the diseño curricular for Provincia de Buenos Aires prescribes this approach to language teaching. So what we see here is teachers not doing what they are expected to do according to this document, this governmental document, very important to us, and because it's law, it's how we English teachers should work in the classrooms. Well, let's move on. There is this video that I don't want you to miss. Remember that anything and everything that is present in the roots, is content to learn from, content to study, content to work on and study for the final exam and for the parciales as well. So I hope you're watching these videos or reading the texts the roots come with, so that you take notes and you systematize the information present in these resources, because they are topics or things you could be asked about. So don't miss them, okay? What are the key points in this video? The first thing I want to say is that the presenter, Mehisto, is a very famous book author. He has written several books on CLIL. He mentions one at the end of the video. I tried to get on the internet, but I couldn't. If you can, it will be a good idea to share. I think it's called the Essentials of CLIL or something like that. But what are the main points introduced by this presenter, this author? One of the things he says is that CLIL is very difficult to define in one sentence, because the truth is that CLIL is a complex educational approach, one for which teachers need to be trained in. We need very qualified teachers. You see, this is something the very same author says. We need to study the approach and to learn how to apply it. So it's an educational approach rather than just a methodology for language teaching. It is not only thought for the teaching of English, but for any other additional language. It is aimed at all kinds of contexts. Pay attention to the article called The Many Faces of CLIL. I think it's in this route. It is not, and this is something I'm adding here, it is not what we know of as bilingual education. When we think of content in English classrooms, we usually think of schools where children go double shift, like San Joaquin, for example, in Bachester, where they have classes in the morning in Spanish and then classes in the evening, in the afternoon in English. This is not what CLIL is, all right? As I said before, CLIL is a methodology that can be applied even to contexts where English is taught 2 hours a week. It can be planned with a CLIL methodology. English lessons that are usually organized 2 hours a week can be planned with a CLIL methodology. What else? Something I don't want to miss. Well, results in investigations in research show that when CLIL is applied, there is an improvement of both L1 and L2, because there is always an invitation to reflect metalinguistically about both languages, and it also supports learning of all subjects in school, or at least those subjects that are addressed through the CLIL plan. So please, again, don't miss this video, take your notes, keep it as information and source for you to have to study for the final exam and for the parcial. Then there were other things in the route I won't stop at, because I think they are quite easy to address. But there was this activity I wanted to carry out face-to-face. Since I'm not going to be there, what I will do now is show you how to do it, so that you can work perhaps with a partner. You can do the same thing I'm going to do here with a partner, and leave your comments of what you experienced in doing it below the publication, below this component. You see, I think there is a thread. I'm going to check that, but I'm almost certain you can leave comments in the post where this, I can't find the words, where this genially has been posted, okay? So, well, what are you expected to do? You were expected to find a lesson, a sequence of your like, and analyze it. And I'm going to show you what this is the road. Okay, this is the road we were discussing before. So this is the text I mentioned before. Don't miss it. Work on it and solve the activities, the task. And then this was the link to a page where you can find lots of sequences, secuencias didácticas, designed along the CLIL methodology. This is the acronym in Spanish, Aprendizaje Integrado de Contenido y Lengua. So I'm going to access to it. You can access to it through the choice of language. Notice that there's material for these 3 languages and or the level. Sorry, no, I wanted to choose primary school. In primary school, there is a sequence of conocimientos del medio that I really like, and I'm going to use it as a model to what you're expected to do, for what you're expected to do. I'm going to use this one, history through ages. Okay, so the instructions tell you to overlook the first 3 pages because most of the answers to the questions I pose are there, or some of them at least. So move right away towards the sequence. One thing I want to say, I want you to notice this is not a plan, all right? This is a handout students receive. It's like a textbook. So behind this handout, we can imagine a teacher thinking of many techniques and strategies to carry out, to implement this material. But for the time being, let's look at the material itself, okay? She begins, so the topic is history through ages, okay? She begins with this instruction. She brings some pictures to school, okay? And then she tells the students, what do you see in these flashcards? Are they from the past or the present? So she begins to activate prior knowledge on these 2 notions, past or present, okay? The question posed is, what do you think? Is it past or present? And then she offers chunks of language to mediate answers. Scaffolding. Scaffolding, a concept you're already familiar with, is key in CLIL. If you do not scaffold activities, CLIL will not work. And I dare to say that if you do not scaffold your activities, your teaching won't help in any methodology. That's how important scaffolding is. So, children first classify pictures according to these 2 notions, past and present. She begins with a task that is not so demanding from the cognitive point of view, neither from the linguistic point of view, because the question is simple, the activity is simple, and she offers a chunk to answer. Okay? Then we have, it says read and complete the chart. We have a definition of what history is. This is interesting because she begins with the very first thing we do when we study a subject, when we study philosophy, when we study geography, when we study history. The first thing we do is to reflect on the name of the subject. What is history? So here we have a definition of history. And then who works with this theme? People who study history are called historians, right? Then notice how interesting this is. The main historical resources that historians use to study the past events are, and she mentions, oral sources, written sources, graphic sources, material sources. What are we looking at here? We're looking at content that is delivered and displayed in the same way it would have been delivered and displayed in L1. Paying attention to all the key elements that make the field what the field is. A definition of the field or subject, the people who do it, who carry it out, the people who are involved with the field, and the tools that are used to investigate in the field. I have mentioned already 3 subtopics to the main theme here, history through ages, you see? So, what we see in these very few pages is a development or a progression of topics. The teacher is not concerned with learning sets of vocabulary about history. She's concerned with children thinking or beginning to think in L2 in the way the subject, the topic, invites them to think. Historians think this way. They think about the sources and they investigate through the sources. Then there is a transfer. This is a text and this is a chart. There is a transfer of information from written form to visual form. And there is a main vocabulary bank offered by the teacher to deal with more complex vocabulary. And then you move on like this, then match historical sources with the related words. Notice how words are dealt with as lexical sets that come together. They are not isolated phrases that can be listed along a column. No, they are worked on as if they were, or as family words actually, as what they are, family words, words that are related thematically. This is a very different way than we are used to when looking at books, where we see long lists of words that are, sometimes they have things in common, a common topic, sometimes they don't. But here there is a reason to group. There is a reason to do this matching activity. We are displaying knowledge of how things work in history. We are identifying oral sources, written sources, graphic sources, and material sources with examples. You see, before these notions were introduced, and now they are dealt with more examples. Okay? Well, then there is a remember caption. History is all of the events that happened in the past, insisting on this definition, and that we should remember. People who study history are called historians, a repetition of the definition. The main historical sources are that historians use to study past events are. So this is a summary of what they have worked on so far. Then there is activity number 4, and I'm going to stop here. It says, read the timeline carefully, then listen and complete the text below. Again, modes of working that are typical of history content. When we deal with history, when we study history, and I'm sure if you think of yourself studying interculturality, where I think Luis teaches a lot of history, I'm sure you have used timelines to systematize your knowledge and to remember. Well, this is what they do in a clear lesson where history is the subject that is being addressed. Well, of course, you can see here the distribution of events or situations and the periods of history where they took place. Then you move on to the ages of history. So in these pages, 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, we have seen a progression of themes. We are not stuck at one single item like daily routines, for example, and then everything is about daily routines. No, we saw a progression of content. We saw what history is, how historians study, who studies history, how they study history. The students have worked on these 2 notions, and now we are moving on towards ages of history. Now that we know what history is, how it is studied, now we are going to move on to ages of history. And that's how themes and topics develop. We can see a progression of cognitive demands from simpler activities to more complex ones where they have to transfer information, where they have to relate items to the group they belong to, and there's a summary of the knowledge progression or the topic progression, and you move on. As you progress through this sequence, you notice more topics are added, more is learned about history. Probably if you go through the 38 pages, you will see all the ages covered through different activities, different sources, different input, and opportunities to talk about what they see, to write about what they learn, with helps of STEM sentences to produce, or with very guided paragraph writing. Here, remember, again, a summary of what they have discussed so far. This is really a very good sequence. As I said before, this is the handout students receive, but it is not a plan. The plan should also contain, as you know by now, the strategies the teacher will use, the dialogues the teacher will promote with this material. Let's go back to the first pages and take a look at, well, the content, you see? Well, this is the title, this is the area. We can think of, in Buenos Aires, I think we talk about ciencias sociales, ciencias naturales, also the area. The group of students, the author, and the time allotted for these lessons. All right. Objectives always stated with verbs, normally in infinitive. If we say it in Spanish, in English, sorry, would be to know about or to learn about. Notice that the objectives are all thematical. You see, historia, edades, cuándo comienza y cuándo termina una etapa. You don't see language focus here because the objectives are always thematic, because what drives content, what drives the lesson is content, not language. So, contenidos del curso ciclo, this is how the objectives relate to the other subjects, probably in 5th year. And this is the thematic progression. La historia, la prehistoria, la edad antigua, la edad media, la edad moderna, la edad contemporánea. Notice the number of themes they cover through these 8 lessons. A lot. There's a progression. We go from general to more specific as we move on. And of course, we see here a sequence of periods as is usually studied in history. There's also a clear awareness of discourses, describing, comparing, ordering, enumerating, explaining, etc. Then there are the tasks here: presentation oral, charts, project work, writing, and there are many more. This is really poorly described here. We see matching, we see transferring information from text to graphs, etc. And then the contenidos lingüísticos, of course, because we are teaching both things. CLIL is a dual focus approach. We need to consider content in both terms, in terms of language and in terms of subject matter. Okay? Funciones, estructuras, and léxico. So a lot is taught through these lessons. And as you see, the activities are not difficult. We could easily carry them out in a 5th grade in our context, with a lot of scaffolding, with teachers helping out, thinking how to present these the topics and the activities, etc. So, well, this is what you are expected to do with the sequence of your choice. I invite you to look at this material. It's very, very rich. You have, if you want to work with CLIL methodology, you can take ideas from this material and apply them to your context of work and even to your plans. I thought you would resort to this for your plans. I don't know why I didn't see more of this. I don't mean you were expected to copy it, to copy the sequence, but get ideas from it, because this was something you were expected to cover for the first part, for while you were planning. You see, this was it. I expected you to use it as a resource for your own plans. I didn't see much of this in Prácticas 3, unfortunately. Okay, so I think it's enough for this segment of the route. I'm going to videotape another short video. I hope it comes out short, I'm not sure, for the second board in this route. Okay? So if you want to leave comments regarding your own experience of sequence analysis or your own experience of this segment of the unit, please do. Regarding, I don't want to forget, you are expected to read two texts. They are both very important texts. Please read them as if you were already studying from them. Okay, this one is by Stoller. Stoller offers you criteria also to analyze the sequences in more depth. Let's take a look at this, please. This is more or less content-based instruction, more or less a history of what was before CLIL. Before CLIL, we had content-based instruction. CLIL is an improvement on this methodology, but it also stands on the previous experience of content-based instruction. So what you will learn here is the beginning of CLIL. Okay? An interesting component of this text is this one. Sound teaching practices that lend themselves to the natural integration of language and content. And you have a list that will offer you an opportunity to revise what you do also, you see, when you need to think about your own way of working, your plans. So a good, a sound practice, a good practice to integrate language and content is one where there is a lot of input, meaningful input, extended input, meaningful output, integration of skills, not just reading and reading and reading, task-based activities. Notice the importance of this methodology, visual support, well, contextualized grammar instruction, methods of, another interesting item in this article is methods for promoting the acquisition of content. How do we promote? We've always talked about the acquisition of language, but now we can stop and think about the acquisition of content. How do we learn content? Well, there are some interesting ideas that promote the learning of content that you can put into practice by designing tasks that foster these actions. And well, it's a very interesting article. Read it with time, summarizes, take ideas from it, okay? And if you want to comment on things coming from this text, again, do below the publication of your Genially. Okay, I think this is it for, sorry, here, this one. This is a book about CLIL. It's a very recent publication. It's, I think it's 2018. It's an excellent book. It has the ABC of CLIL, and you will be reading the chapters as we move along. I think you have been assigned the reading of number 3 and number 4. It's very simple. I don't think you'll find problems with it. So please, as I said before, do your reading assignments, and prepare your notes so that when the second test comes, you won't feel overwhelmed by the amount of reading and studying you have to do. Okay, Now, yes, this is it. Thank you for listening to this video, and I'm going to prepare another one for the second part of this unit. Okay, the second board. Bye bye.